You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. I am always looking for ways that we can get better and better at what we do, and also to do it with more happiness, with more joy. What's the point if we're not having fun? And if you're not enjoying your business and you're not enjoying your life and having fun, maybe it is time to get back in touch with self-care and self-love. Today's guest is going to help us because she has been on that journey, and she helps people like you and me to learn to love themselves happy. I'm speaking today with Shari Alyse. She is motivated by her journey through childhood sexual abuse and other childhood traumas. She has spent her life learning how to love herself fully and completely. Shari helps women and men discover their joy by reconnecting them back to themselves through the practice of self-love. Shari is a best-selling author of the book Love Yourself Happy. She's an international motivational speaker and a self-love coach. She is the co-founder and C.I.O. of the Wellness Universe, a community of world changers who are helping the world become happy, healthy, and whole. It's Shari's personal mission to awaken each person to their own power, beauty, and greatness. So, Shari, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thank you so much for having me on. It is my honor to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I'm really interested in learning more about your own journey. The title of your book is Love Yourself Happy, A Journey Back to You. Tell us a little bit about your background and some of the things you had to overcome to get to where you are today.
Woo, that is a journey in and of itself, which is actually why I wrote the book. Because, I'm not unlike anybody else, Ralph, who has, challenges and has had to navigate our way through it. And mine just really, I always feel like the starting point of my life was at 7 years old, because that is when I encountered sexual abuse. I was sexually abused, molested by a stranger at 7. And I'm just going to totally age myself here. It was 1981. Oprah wasn't out yet, talking openly for the first time about abuse, which, by the way, finally gave me my own permission to come to terms with it. But so no one was really talking about it. So my parents, who, while they believed me, which was amazing, they didn't know what to say or what to do. And so the best way that they knew how to do was my father ignored it completely, pretty much, which then made me feel subconsciously like he was ashamed of me. And then my mom, being her best mom self, just tried to teach me lessons like you can't be so naive and go off with people, which then, of course, what I heard was you're to blame. Yeah. And while, of course, that's not what their intentions were, but that is how I perceived it. And so from that moment on, I went through life just learning how to be a perfectionist, learning how to be an overachiever, learning how to numb my feelings, and really just move through life trying to prove myself and prove my worthiness through all external things. And that led to a career first as an actress, because what more external can you get than people praising you and loving you and putting yourself out there in the spotlight? Until finally, I understood one day that I actually enjoyed being more of me than I did playing a character. And so that's more where the inspiration came in, and I started doing speaking, which led into coaching, and really just, as you mentioned earlier, just helping people to connect back to the truth of themselves, because that was the journey that I personally had to take.
Very fascinating. And congratulations to you for being able to turn that around. That's a powerful and very traumatic thing for someone to be able to experience at that age, or at any age, but particularly at that age, and then not to have the support that you needed. You mentioned perfectionism. that this experience created that tendency in you, along with some other things. And I think a lot of our listeners, and myself included, would tend to be perfectionists. What is the connection? Is it, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What is the connection between that traumatic event or other traumas that cause us to overcorrect and become perfectionistic?
Well, it's a great question. Usually when you have some sort of traumatic event, a lot of people who are victims or survivors, whatever you honestly want to call it, place blame on themselves. And so then you move through life trying to do everything in which to not be blamed. So for me, how that showed up was I felt like I was being blamed for what happened to me. And so I tried to make safer choices in my life moving forward. I tried to do everything perfectly so I wouldn't make a mistake and be hurt again, be let down, be betrayed. And of course, again, I didn't realize this until years later. That's what I was doing. But it was really about keeping ourselves safe and not being able to, because what happens as kids, I mean, you and I all of us were like these open, beautiful people with so much joy and imagination and freedom. And we're vulnerable. And the first time that someone hurts us, betrays us, lets us down, we learn to close ourselves off, and we learn to not be those free and joyful and loving people any longer, because we've learned that that is what harms us. And so we start to move through life feeling or making choices that are safer, doing everything perfectly, overachieving, just trying to not leave ourselves in that vulnerable space anymore. And those are the clients that I work with and the people that I have come across, including, of course, my best client, which is myself.
Well, that's a great example. And it seems like I use this phrase all the time of someone who has turned their mess into their message. And I can't think of a greater mess than what you've just described. But then to be able to turn that around, to be your own client, to help others who are struggling with that and with similar things that tend to shut us down, trying to defend ourselves and blame ourselves for something that's really not our fault. And I think a lot of that translates over into how we run our business. Afraid to reach out, afraid to do marketing, afraid to do advertising, not sure if we measure up, not sure if we're really good enough. And then that kind of manifests into some of these perfectionist tendencies, like I need to go get more certifications. I need to go get more degrees. I need more experience. And so there's all kinds of mind games that we're playing with ourselves. What was the turning point for you? Because what you're describing is a very advanced, mature place of wisdom that you have come to be able to be aware of this and recognize it, change it in yourself, and then to be able to change that with others. What was the turning point for you in transitioning from someone who is reacting without support to being able to make these distinctions and then to turn your life around and help other people?
To be completely honest, I got tired. I was tired of, I noticed that I was placing blame on the world and everybody else. And I kept saying, oh, there's this dark cloud that follows me. And that's why I'm not successful in my business. And that's why I'm having these unhealthy relationships. It was like it was everybody else's fault. And then I just woke up one day and there was this light bulb moment, aha moment that was like, there happens to be a common denominator here in all of this. And it happens to be me. Perhaps there is something that I'm doing that is attracting this or not making these choices that I should be making, these limiting beliefs and thoughts. And it did not happen overnight. I was in lots of bad relationships. I had lots of my business, things that I was going after didn't succeed. And so it really just came, and I'm just going to say like a come to Jesus moment where it was like, what is happening here, Shari? And for me, when it really took a head was a few years ago. I got really ill, and I got scared. And the doctors couldn't find what was wrong with me, which of course is scary in and of itself because you're going to these professionals and they're like, we don't see anything. Yeah. Yeah. You're like, okay, right. Exactly. And so someone came to me from the Wellness Universe, which is the community I mentioned, who simply mentioned to me meditation. And of course, being in this field, I've heard of meditation my entire life, but I had a really hard time quieting my mind, which is a challenge for a lot of people who have trouble with meditation. But at this point, I was so desperate, and I had nothing to lose, and I had a lot of time on my hands because I was sick, and the meditation began. And what I discovered was me. And in that discovery of me and that connection to myself, there was a lot of untapped feelings. There was a lot of numbness. There was a lot of pushed down stuff. And once I began to listen and acknowledge it, the world just kind of opened up for myself. And all of the things that I had been feeling my whole life that I had thought that I had dealt with, I realized, hey, you haven't. Here they are. And they show up in your choices you make, and they show up in the people surrounding you. And so that really was the actual turning point for me to go a little bit deeper and really connect back to myself.
Very interesting. You help women and men discover their joy by reconnecting them back to themselves. I guess through that process you just described, by practicing self-love. Is that the answer really to everything that's wrong with us, do you think?
Well, I would say there isn't really anything wrong with us, and that might sound like all idealistic and dreamy.
Oh yeah, you got me on that one. That's a great answer.
Yeah. I mean, there truly isn't. We just haven't, again, tapped into the wholeness and perfection of who we are, which sounds for some like all woo-woo, and I get it, and you have a business audience, but the truth really is that, number one, we're doing the best that we can. We only know what we know. And when we learn to be more kind and more compassionate with ourselves, then we open up this space within us. We attract better people around us, and we make better choices for ourselves personally and professionally, because we are acknowledging ourselves, our human, fallacies and all that. But we are perfect in our whole self. So yes, I believe the answer is self-love. And that's what I teach, and practices to help strengthen that feeling, the self-worth, the things, as you mentioned before, where people, doubt themselves, don't think that they're enough. I think everything stems from that.
Yeah, definitely. Most of our business problems, especially if we are entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, all of our challenges, obstacles, we're not going to call them problems. There's nothing wrong with us, but we bring all of those things. We bring all of that negative energy. We can say it that way. We bring a lot of baggage into our business. So restating it and taking a step back, and I love how you answer that. There's really nothing wrong with us. What then would be the greatest challenge that you see with the people that you're trying to help to get them to reconnect back to themselves and to practice self-love? Is there a typical obstacle that if you can get them to overcome this, they're well on their way?
Yeah. And the obstacle is that most people just simply don't believe that they're enough. I mean, when it comes down to it and you really start to speak to people, and it starts off, on the top surface level, there's no jobs out there, or I can't find a relationship, and you just keep whittling it down and down and down, and it comes down to not feeling good enough. And the work that I do and the ways that I help people is by having people just acknowledge these feelings, to simply be okay with what it is, that this feeling of not enoughness. Because the minute that we start judging ourselves for the ways that we think and the ways that we act, then we're just going down like another vortex, another spiral, that's just going to pile on more self-doubt and more self-critique and more self-judgment. And so for me, I notice that most people are looking outside of themselves for this worth, whether it's through a job, whether it's through a relationship, whether it's through their bank account, their body, shopping, whatever that is, looking for that fulfillment that can only come from within.
Do you think that this has become more acute because of the social media connected world that we live in, which is, I lovingly call it fake book, because we don't post the real us on there. We post the best version of ourselves online. And it's very rarely that you see someone, posting the real them on there. Do you think that this phenomenon of not feeling good enough and especially looking to external things to measure our worth. Do you think social media has contributed to that?
Without a doubt, Ralph. Without a doubt. I mean, I do believe that people have felt it before social media came along, but not to the extent that they do now. Because as you said, fake book, everyone's posting their highlight reels. You look to all of these inspirational people and these coaches and all of these people that seem to have this perfect life, and none of it is real. And so my work as not only a coach, and this has like seriously been my mission, if you ever look at me online, the videos that I do, and I've been doing them for over 10 years, I talk about it all. I think that we are doing people a disservice when we don't talk about our challenges, when we don't talk about our everyday struggle. Just because I'm a self-love coach does not mean that I don't have doubts, does not mean that I'm always perfect. Like, that's so dumb. The only thing that I know how to do is that I've learned the tools, to navigate through those times. Like this past week, I ate like crap. Like, that's not self-love, but you know what self-love really is to me? It's about forgiving myself. It's about acknowledging, hey, there's something going on in you, Shari. Like, what's going on? What's making you act that way? That's what self-love's about. It's not about this perfection, and that's what people post online. And that is why the work that I do is about connecting to yourself, your truth, and not comparing yourself to others.
That is so powerfully stated. And one thing I like about you, Shari, is the way you just cut through all of the garbage and you get right down to just the way it is.
Yeah.
Especially with this thing about perfectionism, forgiving ourselves, loving ourselves. And that really helps us to be able to get along better with other people because we are more tolerant, more accepting of others, and recognizing that, hey, they're not perfect, I'm not perfect, and we are all a work in progress.
Absolutely. And you couldn't have said it better. That's the thing. When you're able to see that in yourself, then you're able to see that in others. Like all of us, again, as I said, we're all doing the best that we can, and we don't always make the right choices. And sometimes we let people down, and sometimes we screw up. But if your intentions are good and you ask for forgiveness and you're a good person, then the people, hopefully, that you surround yourself are forgiving and compassionate and supportive of you as well.
What can our listeners begin to do right now, or at least today, this afternoon, to begin to make some progress and do a better job of loving themselves and overcoming this sense that they're not good enough? Is there some quick tips that you could share?
Sure. The first thing that I believe most of us don't do is actually check in with ourselves. I think we are in such like a go, go, go world that what's the next thing to achieve? What's the next thing that I have to do? What's the next, that we don't actually stop and say, hey, Ralph, how you feeling today? What do you need? What can I give you? So for most of us, and I did that for years, and that's what the food was for me. That was like my numbing medication of choice was food. And so number one, it's check in with yourself simply. And for me, every morning I put my hands on my heart. I take a deep breath and I literally say first, thank you. Like, thank you for showing up for today. And then how are you feeling? We ask that for other people. Why aren't we checking in with ourselves?
I like that.
And then number two, yeah, right? Like, why are we treating ourselves any different than we would treat anyone else? One of my favorite quotes by Louise Hay, for those that don't know her, check her out. Louise Hay, she says, the longest relationship that you will ever have is with yourself. So you might as well make it a good one.
Well, that's true. I hadn't thought about it like that, but that's absolutely correct.
Right. I mean, people come and go out of our lives, but every single day you're waking up with you. So that's the work that we should be doing is with ourselves. So once you've checked in with yourself, the next thing that you want to do is, I mentioned this before, is acknowledge how you're feeling. Acknowledge it with no self-judgment. Don't try to change it. Just listen to yourself. Oh, I'm feeling frustrated, or oh, I don't feel good, or whatever that is, and however that shows up for you. So acknowledge it. And then lastly is be compassionate and kind and respectful and honor of yourself. So it's basically enlisting the self-care practices and the self-love practices that I teach, which are just all actionable type of things that you can do to make yourself feel heard and seen and understood and better. So those three things every day is the work that I do. And I say work because it is work, but it feels so dang good.
Well, I love that. And that's simple. That is something that anyone could begin to put into place right now and begin to see some immediate results. Shari, what are you working on right now that it's got you really excited that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Thanks for asking. My book was just recently published, as you mentioned, Love Yourself Happy. And so I'm in the midst of going around speaking with that here in Los Angeles, just doing book signings and things like that. So that's really exciting for me because the book is really just my heart, my life, everything just put out into words. And then coming up in November, we're doing a retreat in Sedona called Soul Treat. And it is 2 full days with like 30 practitioners. And it really is like a full on healing, and just fun. It's just a really super fun retreat. So those 2 things are like the top things that I'm really excited about right now.
Very cool. Very, very good. And you're making a real impact with people. I think that your approach is really, it really, like I said, it just cuts to the heart of what's going on. It cuts through all of the exterior things and gets really to the heart of what is holding people back. And I am inclined to agree with you, Shari, that the real challenge, there's nothing wrong with us. The real challenge is loving ourselves. I'm kind of blown away by that. Where can our listeners,
I meant that. Like that was for real, because that's the work that I hope to get across and the feeling.
I see that there are so many people that could benefit from that message. How can our listeners reach out to you and learn more?
Well, you can definitely find me all over social media, but not being fake book or
not
anything, being real.
Not being fake on fake book.
Right.
Yeah.
No, gosh, no, probably too real, which I've heard. Like my dad's like, why do you have to share all that, Shari? So you can find me all over social media at Shari Alyse, and then just go directly to my website, which is sharialyse.com. And then, of course, at my wellness community, which is thewellnessuniverse.com. Those are the best places to reach me. I'm all over YouTube. I have a weekly radio show, all that good stuff.
Okay. So if you want to get more from Shari Alyse, go to sharialyse.com or thewellnessuniverse.com. And we will have those links on the Rebelpreneur website as well. Shari, any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you would like to leave us with?
I would just say to all of your listeners to really just go easy on yourself. The minute that you're able to just open yourself up to your humanness and understand that none of us are perfect, and again, you're doing the best you can, is you make more room for yourself to experience more joy in your life, because you begin to notice the small things, the beautiful things, instead of always beating up on yourself. So just be kinder to yourself.
Very well said. I've been speaking with Shari Alyse. She helps women and men discover their joy by reconnecting them back to themselves through the practice of self-love. Shari is a best-selling author of the book Love Yourself Happy. She's an international motivational speaker and a self-love coach. You can find out more about Shari and connect with her at sharialyse.com or thewellnessuniverse.com. Shari, it's been a real pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you so much for being on Rebelpreneur Radio. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ralph.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.